put your phone or device aside and immerse yourself in this audio story. Perfect for listening on the move, while relaxing, or for bedtime listening. We release new stories daily, so make sure to like and subscribe to not miss out. This story is based on true events. The man who weaponized losing. In 1994, a hedge fund executive walked away from a guaranteed seven-figure Wall Street salary to sell books out of a garage. The world would later call him a visionary, but what they didn't tell you was the price others paid for that vision. Behind Amazon's meteoric rise lies a story of financial engineering so aggressive, so calculated, that it rewrote the rules of American capitalism. This is not the inspirational startup tale you've heard before. This is the dark business story of how Jeff Bezos built an empire on a foundation of deliberate losses, crushed competitors, and a financial strategy that turned traditional business wisdom into a weapon. What you're about to hear reveals the billionaire secrets behind one of the most ruthless wealth accumulation strategies ever deployed. And it all started with a simple question that would haunt an entire industry. What if profit was never the goal? The year was 1994, and Jeff Bezos had just uncovered a statistic that would change everything. While analyzing market trends at D.E. Shaw, one of Wall Street's most sophisticated hedge funds, he discovered that internet usage was growing at 2,300% per year. Not 230%, 2,300%. For most people, this was just an interesting number. For Bezos, it was a market inefficiency waiting to be exploited. He understood something fundamental about the coming digital age. Whoever dominated online retail first wouldn't just win customers, they would own the infrastructure of commerce itself. This wasn't about selling books. It was about building a monopoly before anyone else understood the game being played. Bezos left his Wall Street position and drove cross-country to Seattle, a city chosen not for its innovation culture, but for a darker, more calculated reason: tax strategy. Washington state had no income tax and, critically, a smaller population than California or New York, which meant Amazon could avoid collecting sales tax in the nation's largest markets for years to come. This wasn't just business acumen. It was the first move in a corporate scandal that would unfold over decades. The financial mystery at Amazon's core was already taking shape. Build an advantage not through better products, but through structural manipulation of the system itself. In July 1995, Amazon.com launched from Bezos's garage. The early narrative was simple, almost charming. A scrappy entrepreneur taking on the book industry with nothing but ambition and innovation. But the reality was far more sinister. Bezos had secured $300,000 from his parents. Money they admitted came from their life savings, a bet they knew could destroy them financially. He told them there was a 70% chance they would lose everything. That warning wasn't humility. It was the cold, mathematical certainty of a man who understood he was entering a war, not a market. Within the first month, Amazon was shipping books to all 50 states and 45 countries. Revenue climbed rapidly, $511,000 in 1995, then $15.7 million in 1996. Wall Street analysts praised the growth, but they missed the most important detail buried in Amazon's financial statements. The company was bleeding money at an accelerating rate, and it was doing so intentionally. This was the beginning of Bezos's most dangerous financial strategy. A business model built not on profitability, but on permanent expansion funded by an endless supply of investor capital. Amazon wasn't trying to make money. It was trying to eliminate the possibility that anyone else ever could. When Amazon went public in May 1997 at $18 per share, Bezos sent a letter to shareholders that would become legendary in Silicon Valley. But read carefully, it wasn't a vision statement. It was a warning disguised as inspiration. He wrote, "We will make bold investment decisions, and we will measure our success not by profit margins, but by market leadership. Wall Street read it as ambition. Competitors should have read it as a threat. What Bezos was really saying was this: Amazon would undercut, outspend, and outlast every rival by running at a loss until they all collapsed. Profit wasn't delayed. It was deliberately sacrificed to weaponize growth. The stock market money poured in, and Bezos deployed it like a general conducting financial warfare. Between 1997 and 2000, Amazon expanded from books into music, electronics, toys, and eventually everything. Each new category followed the same ruthless pattern. Enter the market, slash prices below cost, absorb massive losses, and wait for competitors to suffocate. Traditional retailers like Toys R Us and Circuit City watched in horror as Amazon sold products at prices that made no economic sense. They couldn't compete because they were trying to run sustainable businesses. Amazon wasn't. This was predatory pricing at a scale never before seen in American commerce. A business crime hiding in plain sight, protected by the label of innovation. Then came the moment that should have destroyed everything. In 1999, at the height of the dot-com bubble, Barron's published a devastating cover story titled Amazon.bomb. The article laid bare the terrifying truth. Amazon had $1.2 billion in debt, was burning through $1 million per day, and had no path to profitability. Analyst Ravi Surya from Lehman Brothers issued a report declaring Amazon's bonds were junk, and the company faced a weak balance sheet, which, in our view, will get worse. The stock collapsed, dropping from $106 to $6 in just over a year. Employees who had believed in the vision watched their stock options become worthless. Industry experts predicted bankruptcy within months. But here's where the story takes its darkest turn. Bezos didn't pivot, didn't cut costs, didn't chase profitability. He doubled down, because he understood something the analysts missed. In a war of attrition, the side willing to lose the most money wins. And Amazon had access to capital markets in a way brick-and-mortar retailers never could. The financial maneuvering grew more sophisticated, more aggressive. Amazon negotiated brutal terms with suppliers, demanding 90-day payment windows while collecting customer money instantly. This created negative working capital, a cash conversion cycle where Amazon used other people's money to fund its expansion. Publishers and manufacturers were trapped. Refuse Amazon's terms and lose access to the internet's fastest-growing marketplace, or accept them and watch your profit margins evaporate. This wasn't entrepreneurship. It was financial coercion disguised as partnership. The wealth and power Bezos was accumulating came directly from squeezing every player in the supply chain. Behind closed doors, Amazon's culture reflected the ruthless efficiency of its business model. Former employees described a workplace where metrics ruled everything, where managers were encouraged to view colleagues as expendable resources. Bezos himself led leadership meetings using a technique he called disagree and commit, which in practice meant subordinates could voice concerns before being overruled and forced to execute strategies they believed would fail. The company's stock market secrets weren't about innovation. They were about creating an internal machine optimized for a single purpose: grow or die. Everything else, including human cost, was irrelevant data. By 2001, the dot-com bubble had burst, and hundreds of internet companies were collapsing into bankruptcy. But Amazon survived. Not because it had become profitable, it hadn't. It survived because Bezos had convinced investors that traditional metrics didn't apply to Amazon's vision of the future. While competitors like Webvan and eToys liquidated assets and laid off thousands, Amazon raised more capital and expanded further. The real business documentary here isn't about survival. It's about how Bezos rewrote the rules of capitalism itself by convincing Wall Street that losses weren't failures, but investments in inevitable dominance. The casualties mounted outside Amazon's walls. Independent bookstores closed by the thousands, unable to match prices subsidized by venture capital. Borders, once a bookstore giant, began its slow collapse as customers migrated to Amazon's discounted online marketplace. Electronics retailers watched their margins evaporate as Amazon undercut them on every product. Each closure represented jobs lost, communities hollowed out, and economic power consolidated into Bezos's growing empire. This was the hidden consequence of Amazon's rise and fall strategy. The company never fell, but everyone else did. Then Bezos made a move so audacious, so perfectly calculated, that it revealed the true scope of his vision. In 2006, Amazon launched Amazon Web Services, a cloud computing platform that had nothing to do with retail. On the surface, it seemed like a bizarre pivot, but the dark financial mystery hidden inside this decision was brilliant. Amazon had built massive server infrastructure to handle holiday shopping spikes, leaving that capacity idle for most of the year. Instead of viewing it as waste, Bezos saw an opportunity to sell computing power to other companies, essentially forcing them to build their businesses on Amazon's infrastructure. Netflix, Airbnb, and thousands of startups would eventually run on AWS, paying Amazon for the privilege of existing. This wasn't diversification. It was the ultimate corporate scandal, hiding in plain sight. Bezos had found a way to make competitors and partners alike dependent on Amazon's technology, ensuring that even if they succeeded, Amazon would profit from their growth. The business crime wasn't illegal. It was far more dangerous than that. It was legal, brilliant, and inescapable. AWS would eventually generate the cash flow that allowed Amazon to continue its retail war of attrition indefinitely. By 2015, AWS accounted for less than 10% of Amazon's revenue, but nearly 100% of its operating income. The retail business still ran at razor-thin margins or losses, subsidized entirely by the cloud computing division. This revealed the full scope of Bezos's money and greed strategy. Create a profitable business in one sector to fund permanent market warfare in another, ensuring Amazon could always undercut competitors who didn't have a secret profit engine hidden in their balance sheets. The financial maneuvering extended into tax strategy with equal aggression. Between 2007 and 2015, Amazon paid an effective federal tax rate of just 13%, despite billions in profits from AWS. In 2017 and 2018, Amazon paid zero federal income tax, despite reporting over $11 billion in profits. How? By exploiting tax credits for research and development, stock-based compensation deductions, and accelerated depreciation on assets. Every strategy was legal, meticulously engineered by armies of accountants and tax attorneys. But legality doesn't erase the moral question at the heart of this business thriller. Should a company worth hundreds of billions contribute nothing to the society that enabled its rise? As Amazon's market dominance grew, so did the accusations of anti-competitive behavior. The company used data from third-party sellers on its platform to identify successful products, then launched competing Amazon-branded versions at lower prices. Small business owners who had built products and customer bases watched Amazon clone their success and bury them in search rankings. When confronted, Amazon claimed it was simply offering customers better value. But the entrepreneurship secrets revealed here are chilling. The platform wasn't neutral infrastructure. It was a surveillance system designed to identify and eliminate threats. The human cost inside Amazon's warehouses added another layer to this dark business story. Workers reported brutal conditions, timed bathroom breaks, productivity tracking so precise that seconds mattered, injuries from repetitive strain and impossible quotas. Bezos's obsession with efficiency had created a system where humans were optimized like algorithms, pushed to physical limits to shave pennies off delivery costs. When workers tried to unionize, Amazon deployed sophisticated union-busting tactics, including mandatory anti-union meetings and surveillance of organizers. The wealth Bezos accumulated, making him the richest person in modern history, was built partly on the backs of workers paid wages so low that many qualified for government assistance. The taxpayer was subsidizing Amazon's labor costs, while the company paid minimal federal taxes. The system wasn't broken. It was working exactly as Bezos designed it. By 2020, Amazon's market capitalization exceeded $1.5 trillion, and Bezos's personal wealth surpassed $200 billion. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated Amazon's dominance as lockdowns forced the world online. While small businesses collapsed and unemployment soared, Amazon hired 400,000 additional workers and saw profits surge. Bezos's wealth increased by $75 billion in a single year, more than the GDP of most nations. The pandemic revealed the final truth of Amazon's business model. It wasn't built to compete in markets, but to absorb them entirely, waiting for crises to eliminate whatever competition remained. The regulatory pressure finally began mounting. Congress launched antitrust investigations. European regulators filed charges over Amazon's use of seller data. Critics called for breaking up the company, arguing that Amazon's control over retail, cloud computing, logistics, and even entertainment represented a monopoly that stifled innovation and harmed consumers. But by then, Amazon was too deeply embedded in the economy to dismantle without causing massive disruption. Bezos had built a corporate scandal so large, so integrated into daily life, that society had become dependent on the very system designed to exploit it. In 2021, Bezos stepped down as CEO, transitioning to executive chairman while still controlling the company's direction. His public image had shifted from garage entrepreneur to space-obsessed billionaire, funding Blue Origin with Amazon stock sales. But the financial mystery of his wealth remains. How does someone accumulate $200 billion in a system designed to tax income and capital gains? The answer lies in another dark secret. Billionaires don't sell stock to access wealth. They borrow against it. Bezos could take loans using his Amazon shares as collateral, accessing billions in liquidity without triggering capital gains taxes. When he died, the cost basis of those shares would reset, and his heirs would inherit the wealth tax-free. This wasn't tax avoidance. It was a perfectly legal wealth preservation strategy, available only to those who had already won the game. The lessons embedded in this real-life business story are as valuable as they are disturbing. Bezos understood that in capitalism, the greatest advantage isn't innovation, it's access to capital and the willingness to lose money longer than competitors can survive. He recognized that controlling infrastructure is more valuable than selling products, that data is power, and that regulatory systems move too slowly to stop companies that grow faster than laws can adapt. Amazon's rise proves that markets don't reward the best product or the fairest player. They reward whoever can deploy capital most aggressively and stomach losses most patiently. But there's a darker lesson buried beneath the surface of this business documentary. Jeff Bezos didn't break rules. He exploited the space between them. Every financial maneuver, every tax strategy, every predatory pricing decision was legal, approved by lawyers and accountants. The system itself enabled everything that happened, which raises the most unsettling question of all. If the rules allow this, are they really rules, or just suggestions for those without enough capital to ignore them? Today, Amazon touches nearly every aspect of modern life: retail, entertainment, groceries, healthcare, logistics, cloud computing. The company Bezos built from a garage has become infrastructure itself, so essential that its collapse would trigger economic catastrophe. That's not market success, it's market capture. And it happened not through superior products or better service, but through financial engineering, so sophisticated that by the time regulators understood what was happening, it was already too late to stop it. The story of Amazon's early days isn't about innovation triumphing over old industries. It's about how wealth and power concentrate when someone understands the system better than those who built it, and is willing to exploit every advantage regardless of consequence. Bezos saw the future, not because he was visionary, but because he was patient, ruthless, and willing to sacrifice short-term morality for long-term dominance. The garage where Amazon started wasn't the birthplace of a dream. It was the war room where a new kind of monopoly was engineered. One transaction, one undercut price, one eliminated competitor at a time. And if you're wondering whether the financial maneuvering has stopped, whether Amazon has finally become the benevolent innovator it claims to be, consider this. The same strategies that built the empire in the 1990s are still being deployed today, just on a scale so massive that they've become invisible. The machine Bezos created doesn't need him anymore. It runs itself, optimizing, expanding, consuming. That's the true billionaire secret hiding in plain sight. You don't build an empire to run it forever. You build a system that makes your presence irrelevant, ensuring that even when you leave, the machine you created keeps grinding forward, unstoppable and eternal. The question that opened this story, what if profit was never the goal, now has its answer. Profit wasn't the goal because profit is temporary. Bezos was never building a company. He was building inevitability itself. And in the darkness of those early days, when everyone thought Amazon would collapse under the weight of its own losses, Bezos already knew the truth. The side willing to bleed the longest doesn't just win the war. It rewrites the rules so thoroughly that future battles become impossible. That's not business. That's conquest. And the empire he built will outlast us all. Subscribe and listen to our next story below.